Hang on. Well, that's fun. It didn't play the intro. Let's see if I can just force the intro. Thank you, world. Thank you, guys, for all this stuff. The whole world is going to get a bonus. You're going to get a bonus at the top here.
Yep. Hey, friend. Listen. I know the world is scary right now. Corruption, war, inflation, demographics, degeneracy, disease, unrest, hatred, and despair. We didn't come here to tell you how it is, but that it's going to get way better.
Got a good thing coming, and it's all I need. Everything I wanted, just wait and see.
Better by Bitcoin.
Every time. So good.
Stadium on that one for me. So the reason I was bringing up old bottles of wine is because old bottles of wine are a great example of two things, of one thing, one bottle, one physical object that can have diametrically opposed purposes, telos. So the idea here being with an old bottle of wine, it is, maybe a certain group of people will say, oh, this is a historic vintage. Like, we need to put this in a museum. We need to showcase the history and the value of this to the public. And this is what humanity has done and where it's gone and what's the history of this bottle and all this other stuff. Then there's another diametrically opposed purpose, which is to say, no, we should just pop the cork and drink it. We'll never be able to experience another wine like this historic bottle of wine. And the second you pop the cork, you lose all of the intrigue and interest of a real bottle of wine that has this really fascinating history, right? And so it doesn't really fit well in a museum anymore. And then if you contrarily put it in the museum, it doesn't really, you can never open the bottle. It's a unusable piece of unusable human artifact at that point for the purpose of consuming and drinking the wine. Okay. So the question then becomes, well, how do you arbitrate between these two different diametrically opposed purposes in this thing? And the standard answer would be, well, you let the market decide. Who's the highest bidder, right? Who's the highest bidder on this thing? Whoever gets the highest bidder, a billionaire spends hundreds of thousands of dollars on this bottle of wine, they get to do whatever they want with it. Or a museum spends hundreds of thousands of dollars on this wine, they get to do whatever they want with it. Whoever the bidder is, great. Let the market decide. That will determine the thing's purpose. Now, here's how it connects to Bitcoin. People will say that the thing that determines Bitcoin's purpose and how it's used is the fee market. The fee market gets to say, oh, whoever's paying the fee, they get to determine what the purpose of their transaction are. We don't have to mitigate or mediate any of this, right? But there's a subtle problem with that. And the subtle problem is that the fee market itself is a part of Bitcoin. It would be like saying the market for wine is actually inside the wine bottle itself. And it's just like, wait a second. No. That doesn't make any sense applying it back to Bitcoin or back to the wine bottle. What you actually need and what you have to do is have an outside market, an outside observer. So the actual corollary to this, which says this is or is not Bitcoin's purpose, if you want to allow the market to decide what is and is not Bitcoin's purpose, you'd actually have to look at the market cap of Bitcoin versus, so the market cap of the monetary unit versus the market cap of, for instance, arbitrary data. What's the market like? What is the market cap of arbitrary data? Well, the market cap for arbitrary data is going to be something like what fees people are willing to pay. And the market cap for Bitcoin, the unit, is going to be something like $2 trillion because we can actually look at it in the market, right? So the point here is that the argument that we can decide Bitcoin's purpose, its telos, from fees alone falls apart because it's internal to Bitcoin. It's not the actual market. And when we look at the actual market for Bitcoin, we understand clearly what the purpose is if we're using that as a purpose. So there you go. Cold open.
I'm curious your take, Brandon, because I know you've talked a lot to like Dr. Jeff and a bunch of other folks kind of like more on the finance side. How would you kind of react to what Bondor is saying? But even on top of that, like, do you think I'm going to call it the cyclical reasoning he kind of just like outlined is actually a viable thing to kind of like start trying to unpack? Like, is it correct to kind of make that assumption of like the fee market and Bitcoin are the same thing to a degree because they are part of the same thing versus like, I don't know, like trying to look at them disparately as the Bitcoin price is one thing and the fee market is one thing. I don't know. Is that what you're trying to say too, Bonder? Like I'm like, maybe you like tee up a better question of what I'm saying for Brandon to answer. But I think I guess my core question there is, do you think you can look at the fee market completely disparate of Bitcoin, or do you think looking at Bitcoin and the fee market together actually is a correct way of doing it? And do you think this whole Nazi core thing has actually been like doing it a disservice because they keep trying to separate them? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, hopefully you guys can hear me too, because I just lost it for a second. I can hear you the whole time. I was saying I was lost. But anyway, yeah, I think that like even a Dr. Jeff don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but a lot of people are having issues with this because you hear a lot of people say, I'm a free market guy, however, or I'm a free, however. So I think this is something that we're all grappling with, like we're all really struggling with, and that's not going to go away anytime soon because it is going to, 2140, right? Like this is going to be a thing that just kind of keeps going on. People are going to have to be grappling with this somehow, and in the sense of fee market and how do miners exist or whatever. But I think that the point I've come to is that, this is a human system. It's software that could run for 1,000 years by ourselves, but humans use it. And if humans don't care about it, then it doesn't matter. Like it can run in the background for 1,000 years, but if none of us care about sound money or using it, then it doesn't matter. It just quite honestly doesn't matter. So in saying all that, this is where the free market thing, to your guys' point, the Cantillionaires, right now we live in two worlds. So there's unlimited fiat that can come in and control the fee market of Bitcoin, of that system. And I think that's the whole point of this. And that's what's, you have to be very careful. And people that say there's not a Bitcoin culture, or, you don't have to protect the network, the free market will figure it out itself. Will it? Nature abhors a vacuum. You can see what happens to a garden when you left it untended. And that's the problem. I think a lot of Bitcoiners, we get ourselves into like the memes cut both ways, right? And all the euphemisms and analogies, if we're not careful, like don't ever spend Bitcoin, hodl. Like a lot of the memes are there to start to get the normies in the door and how we all got in the door. But then once you start understanding what's going on, you can't really use a lot of those memes anymore for yourself. Like that's not, you have to use the circular economy. We just saw Jack Dorsey with the Square payments and like, how does the circular economy get going? How do people learn about Bitcoin? Well, you got to use Bitcoin, and it's replace and then spend. It's probably not spend and replace, but it's replace it, buy some more Bitcoin right at that second and then spend that Bitcoin. However you want to look at it, or just living fully on Bitcoin. Like be the world you want to see, be the change you want to see, live on a Bitcoin standard. Those people that do it at the beginning, yes. Are we going to take some arrows? Have people gone to prison? Yes. Has it made our lives a little bit, crazier because we have to do a few more taxes or something or whatever? I mean, yeah, it is. But what side do you want to be on, and what world do you want to put yourself in? So, in saying all this, yeah, I think it's something that everyone's kind of grappling with because this unlimited fiat cantillionaire world can come in and cause a lot of harm and detriment to this really small nascent asset class that's still trying to figure itself out and just, maybe not figure itself out, but it's still trying to get its foothold on society and to make its mark. And we still have a long way to go. And when it's small like this, yeah, the unlimited fiat can come in and really start detracting and changing how people are doing things. And yeah, like you could have Hunter Biden can come in and just like, I got this digital painting that I just did all of a sudden. And it's such and such, and the fees, right? Like this can be very distorted. And I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole in the sense of like losing the average person trying to learn about what's going on. But I think that for a Bitcoiner, it cuts both ways. The memes, the analogies, and all the things we use to try to shake people's context it really starts to harm Bitcoiners actually once they go down the rabbit hole more and you're already in the door. And then you're like, well, wait, I can't, I had to huddle. I never can spend Bitcoin again. Well, when do I spend? And it starts like eating away at people and they don't, well, it's the fees will take care of itself. Well, it's a free market. Well, Bitcoin's inevitable. Like, okay, that I can just walk away and clap my hands and way we won, and then just like go away, and then then what? Guess what? Again, nature abhors a vacuum. So anyway, I don't want to beat a dead horse necessarily, but I think this is really the fight of our time that again isn't talked about quite enough right now.
I love this thought of like nature abhors a vacuum, and I think that's one of the things that actually, for me, the Nazi core argument actually distills to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the core argument quintessentially is the creation of a vacuum, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they think you can be completely devoid of any
Like
moral
we're robots and we're
alignment.
numbers. Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
it's like I actually agree with the core argument
Yeah, I
insofar
see
as
both
that you
sides.
assume Bitcoin is completely used by AI. If
Yes.
Bitcoin is
Yeah.
completely used by computers, core is correct. 100%, right? Because at the end of the day, the computer is going to find the most efficient way to do something. And so it's going to do exactly what it needs to do. Now, we're going to have a different debate in terms of like what should and shouldn't be an op return and should it be bigger, should it be smaller. But at the end of the day, the key is the computer will kind of align to not doing,
The most
CSAM or
efficient.
whatever,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, it'll do the most efficient thing, right? With the systems that it has. The problem with that is Bitcoin is not made for computers. It is perfect for computers, right? But it is made to be used by human beings that are fallible.
Yeah.
And so you cannot have this moral vacuum, because that's kind of what they're creating. Is like, no, you do you. It's literally moral relativism. It's what has gotten all of these woke problems that people like. I would argue most people who are in Bitcoin can see the fraying of the wokeness, whether you're woke or not. Like this whole, I think the cool thing about the current political discourse, and I have not paid attention to politics since I got into Bitcoin, which is kind of fun. But at the same time, like what I'm seeing is both sides are seeing the moral fray happening. Whether they agree with what the moral fray is different. But I think both people, and I think actually like this Epstein stuff from earlier this week is kind of showing that like everybody's saying like you're morally, repugnant. They're basically both sides are slinging that turd back and forth. But I think the key here is they're both making a judgment call that morals are important, right? Not saying that they're an alignment about what those morals are, but they're both in alignment that you need something. And so this vacuum that's created when you just say, oh, the fees are going to create the moral alignment is the issue. And this kind of goes to this whole question that I had of like the cantillionaires of Bitcoin. In my mind, the cantillionaire class of Bitcoin are the people who are mining in the beginning, right? The people who have tens, if not hundreds, or thousands of Bitcoin, maybe not tens, but like hundreds or thousands of Bitcoins that are at a point where they don't feel fiat anymore. That is not a presupposition they ever have. Like if they need to go spend $50,000 on a stake, like, oh, half a Bitcoin, fine. Like they legitimately it just doesn't even register anymore. There's no pain there. And they have the same mentality as somebody on Wall Street that are looking to make a buck, right? A buck on Wall Street's $1 billion. They're looking to make a buck. They're looking to fill that vacuum within themselves because they don't have to fill their standard coffers that most people have to worry about. And so, from my mind, the cantillionaire class of Bitcoiner is the dev that is not thinking about 2140. They're thinking about what can I do in the next 10 years to accrue more Bitcoin, even though they already have a Bitcoin. They're hoarding their shekels, right? And so in their mind, and goes to, this is what my core contention with Peter Todd and Jameson Lopp is they are doing this for VCs. They have been very upfront about that, and they've been very outward about that. And now Gloria and all these other ones, like, I'm not making any judgment calls on their character, but I'm just judging the motivations, right? And the motivations that I'm seeing, because they've been pretty plain about them, with Jameson, like, how are you going to stop me? Okay. Like, the way you stop any bad person from doing something is you put a good person in front of them to either make a moral argument or arrest them. Like, I'm not saying that we need to arrest Jameson, right? But what I'm saying is you need to change their perspective and give them an understanding of what you were just saying, Brandon, which is there is a moral vacuum now emerging post V30. And Beautyon had a really great post on this yesterday. He was kind of talking about um, at the end of the day, with this thing that Square just did, all these companies are gonna start having boardroom meetings about, hey, we need to be using Bitcoin because we're losing 3% on every transaction. To and I did this math. I think Brandon, you and I talked about this a couple years ago, but like McDonald's tomorrow, if they were to switch to a Bitcoin standard, would save, I think it's like $43 million a year in transaction fees. Like that is not something they're going to ignore. And there's no clawbacks. Like you can go back and you can claw back anything from any credit card company ever because they can just go do that. You don't have, you don't have chargebacks anymore, right? And so it's like it is a thing that every board is going to look at, but they're also going to look at the other side of this, which is, well, hang on though, but we can't control that asset class. So what can we do to control it? And this V30 surface area that has just now been increased is going to be a part of that conversation. They're going to be like, well, hey, well, can we kill it? Can we change it? Can we create, McCuckbucks and put it on there as a B app? Yeah, you can do that now. And so I'm gonna stop rambling, but like that's I think the thing that people are missing with this whole core knots thing is like the people who don't have to think about like money anymore have motivations that must be questioned, because they are still thinking about something, and what is it?
For me, I I tend to push back, as I mentioned yesterday, JD. I tend to push back on calling it the Cantillionaires of Bitcoin. Like it's a useful term for Bitcoiners to understand the Peter Todds and Jameson Lops as Cantillionaires of Bitcoin, but really they're just Bitcoin insiders, which is to say they are very close to the happenings of Bitcoin. They've been around for so long. They've met all the people. They have working relationships with all sorts of funding sources and developers and technologies. They have just a very central influence on the system and the ecosystem. Does that mean they're cantillionaires? I don't think so, because there's no money printing in Bitcoin. There's no forward optimization that says, oh, well, if I position here, I'll be able to get, the next $1 billion print. Like that'll go into my foundation, that'll go into my nonprofit or my business, which is the case with the Federal Reserve. The closer you in Washington, D.C., the closer you get, the more likely your pet projects will get funding, because there is a money printer that actually prints money, and that money gets distributed to whoever's closest to that money printer. So I disagree, and I don't think we should call them cantillionaires of Bitcoin. But
So can I push back one? I
Sure.
want to hear both of your takes on this piece. Here's my take. Here's my pushback though. You're looking at the monetary side of it, which is capped, right? Which may not be capped in the future if some people have their way. But the key here is where I'm actually thinking the inflation piece is the problem is the block space. And so it's the cantillionaires of the block space. And if you can get close enough to that side of things and impact how the block space is allocated, which is the one inflationary aspect of Bitcoin, right? Every single block, right? The block space keeps getting bigger. And so if you can control that aspect of it and you can start dictating how many op returns there are or how big those op returns are, and you can do things like B apps now, right? That makes you a cantillionaire. And that I think is actually my contention with this is like I think the monetary aspect of it is one piece, but I think it's the cantillionaires of the future scarce resource, and probably, in my opinion, the most scarce resource as Bitcoin continues to scale, the block space. What's your take on this, Brandon, of like the block space side of things? Because I think, you probably talked a lot about the monetary side of it, but like, what are you hearing on the block space side of things?
So I haven't talked to many people on that recently. And speaking of that, I should probably talk to Bob Burnett soon, who I know will be contentious for some people for for good reasons to talk to Bob. But this is something that he's talked about for a long time. Obviously, just the second layer of scarcity in Bitcoin being the block space. So that being said, I want to go back though really quick, because I haven't talked to anyone recently about that, and it's not necessarily my expertise, other than maybe the game theoretical aspect of it. But I think that going back to what I think is important for the average person and for Bitcoiners to understand is like fourth grade reading level stuff. And this is this is how most people think, and this is the easiest ways to think about things. And you look at like Bitcoin being a protocol. Bitcoin is, we always say it's like fire, or it's like the wheel, or it's like these things. And it's like, well, those things are great too, but like the wheel is only as good as humans using it, right? Like a wheel will just sit there in the forest and it like won't do anything unless humans are using it and using the energy that it can use it properly. Or fire is not contained. We see, unfortunately, right around where JD is from, what happens if fire is not contained and that energy isn't used and directed appropriately. And this is where, like, again, I go back to when nature abhors a vacuum. When a garden's unattended, the bad things tend to happen, and this is just the nature of life and entropy and a fallen world that we're in, that seemingly a lot of people still don't want to understand or acknowledge. I think more people are understanding that there's good versus evil spirits, and that's what's happening in the world, the 24/7 battle happening that most people for a long time just tried to deny, and just like or just they weren't aware of it, or they were denying, and now they're starting to see, oh geez, like there really is some stuff going on way above the or way under the layers, or whatever you want to call it, that we just weren't privy to before, we weren't open to. So I think some of that, and I go back to like the founding fathers. I forget, I think it was John Adams, but it was just them writing about things and the experiment of America, the Republic. And obviously people know, or a lot of people should know, hopefully, the Republic, if you can keep it, what Ben Franklin famously said, but also that the society would only work if there was a moral and just religious people that actually upheld that society. Again, if you don't have good people running the system, then the system doesn't matter. It does not matter. So the free market is the free market, but the free market's also Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan came in and said, hey, I'm bigger and badder than all of you, and you're gone, you're dead. That was a free market. That was a free market. And I don't know how many people are actually ready for a free market. A lot of people talk about a free market, but they ain't ready for a free market. They don't know what a free market is. I think a lot of people that talk like that, they've never seen a free market before. They don't, that's, like a lot of people that talk about that are the people that probably be crying first and saying, oh no, I don't want a free market actually. Oh no, this hurts. So like that's, we have to understand, we do live in a world that there are these boundaries, whether there are spiritual boundaries, or there are boundaries that we impose on ourselves, like a rule of law. And this is where, again, like I empathize with the anarchists. I understand what they're saying, and you're trying to shift the Overton window back towards that direction. But we do have to have some type of guideline or something for civilized society. And this is how societies progress for thousands of years. So anyway, going off in many different tangents, but I think for me, it's some of these analogies and bringing things back full circle are some of the most important ways to really understand what's going on here, and how to really live our lives and govern ourselves and our family, and then do broader society, because the society keeps growing, and it gets harder and harder when you have a bigger society. So this is something that, again, the rules, not rulers. Bitcoin has, again, one of these euphemisms, memes, that's very tough to really grasp when you get further down the rabbit hole, in a way. And we're seeing this fight play out, where is it really rules versus rulers, or rules not rulers? So we're seeing this world, and again, I think it's a little bit of both, obviously, but it's not just one or the other. Life it's not usually just black and white necessarily, unless it's some laws of nature, gravity, things of that nature. But anyway, I don't want to circle the wagons too much here.
The one of the things that I see happening that directly addresses that point, I think, which is everybody kind of has their own worldview. Naturally, they must have their own view of the world, because their experience is unique to them and the rest of that. But I think what we're seeing in real time is people have come to Bitcoin with various worldviews, and some of those worldviews are ridiculous. They literally cannot stand on their own 2 feet. Some of those worldviews are very robust and have been around for literally centuries. Some of those worldviews are just a couple centuries old. Some of them are millennia old, right? Now, so how do you differentiate the worldviews and go through all that process? And I think your average modern worldview, especially in like engineering circles, is going to be it's almost moral relativism, but it's not exactly moral relativism. It's kind of like teleological relativism. Like, it's like, I have my personal beliefs as an engineer, but it's okay for me to build systems regardless of what their purpose is. So like it's, oh yeah, we want to do this, but you know, it doesn't really matter. Like I don't, as an engineer, a lot of times it's like, and you'll see this in engineering cultures, like, do we want to build the thing that is evil? Do we want to build this like button that will cause dopamine hits and get people addicted to social media? Like as an engineer with a conscience, you probably be like, no, I don't want to do that. It's going to have really bad consequences for civilization. But as an engineer who has teleological relativism, you're just thinking, yeah, well, I need the money though. So we can justify this because I'm not responsible and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, it goes back to the margin call thing. I needed the money. That's why I participated in the system that screwed over an entire generation of homeowners, right? Like you feel this tension in the space right now. And a lot of that is coming to the surface in terms of people are now having to confront their own moral presuppositions about what is and isn't the right telos for Bitcoin, what is or isn't a correct moral structure. And you can visit, I mean, man, it's some of these people, especially in the engineering world, and I'm speaking this as an engineer, have not really thought through these things as they should have because of the systems that engineers have to deal with and the necessity of, well, I need a paycheck and how am I going to get paid?
I'd love to ask both of you a question actually on that front of things, right? And Brandon, we'll start with you on this though, but it's like in any field there are like blockers, right? They're just things that you kind of assume are the floor, and so you don't think about them. And so like I'm curious as an athlete, Brandon, like what do you think is the hardest like type of thinking for an athlete to do? Like is the you know, because we were kind of talking about the gaming, like the game theoretical side of things. Like where do you think is the biggest like mental blind spot in terms of athletes that they just like they don't ever process on this side, which may be a blessing and a curse. And then the same thing on the engineering side for you, you know, Bondor. What's the key? You know, and you may have just kind of talked about there. It's like, oh, they can't really go past relativism because like, oh, that's like a forbidden fruit. Like, are there mental like areas that you think athletes and then engineers like kind of struggle with, and then maybe normies too? Like, what do you think are the like biggest blockers mentally for most people?
Yeah, I mean, this is something I thought about for a long time.
Oh, I think we're losing you. We're losing you to the snowpack.
Bummer.
If you can hear us, we'll rotate out to Bondor, and then when your internet settles down, we'll come back and get your. Yeah, okay, here you are. Here, go again.
So,
start again. Yeah.
I think the big thing that I've realized in all the guys that I've seen that went on to play in the NHL and you know, tons of guys, I mean, dozens and dozens of guys that I've known or grown up with, and just seeing athletes across the board, that the guys who could really get into this flow state or into the zone, a lot of times correlated with those who weren't engineers. Let's just say that. And so if you kind of get where I'm going with that, you tend to have this world where the less you can think, the better. And that can mean a few different things, obviously. But there was a saying, my coach, when I was growing up, he was the last cut on the 1980 Miracle on Ice Olympic hockey team. And so he was the final cut, and he coached me for like 5 years, like some of my years of like, you know, 9 to 14, some of those most developmental years. So I was very blessed in that regard. And he always said, don't think it weakens the team. And I never understood what that was until like 10 years later. And he never explained it to us. It was just like one of the riddles he would always like say. He had different riddles and, you know, stuff like that. And then I realized like, oh my gosh, you're
we're gonna need you to go back because I'm like at the edge of my seat and I want to hear this. I want to hear this piece. So don't.
He was about to explain what the secret riddle was.
I know all the people. So starting back when you come back in. So don't think it weakens the team, and you were diving into what that meant.
Yeah. So don't think it weakens the team. And And obviously when you're in flow state, you're not thinking, you're just using your talents, using your abilities, using your intuition, some of these higher faculties that humans have that for whatever reason, like we just use our five senses normally, like that, like going back to the normie usually uses their five senses, like an animal, you know, we all know the five senses, but humans made in God's image have six higher faculties: intuition, reason, memory, imagination, intuition. I don't know if I said that. I always forget like one of them. Anyway, the whole point is to use those higher faculties, and that's what sets, you know, really a couple % of people apart. And then the athletes, I think, that can get into that flow state and that zone more, so you're not thinking. And again, that's why like athletes a lot of times are like, oh, he's a dumbass, or like, oh, blah 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 blah. It's like, well, it's not that they're a dumbass. It's all relative. You think he's a dumbass because he can't do some stupid ass, you know, test in school with a Scantron, you know, it's true or false. But he's a genius on the field, right? His body moves in a way that yours never could. And so everyone has these different talents and abilities. And so you have engineers like Vondor said, which you can, you know, talk more about this obviously more astutely in that world. But again, you have
Correct.
I love. Well, I'm sure you can still hear us, Brandon. But the it just makes me laugh still having like internet dial-up issues, and not saying that you have dial-up
No, I
internet,
know.
but just the
I don't know why it's
2025. It's just so funny.
Dude, it's
Yeah.
it's so weird. This is the most that I've had in a long time here. But anyway, so engineers being the opposite, right, end of that spectrum, where it's using a completely different side of that, and then, you know, so like both sides can say the same thing about each other, but it's all relative, and that's like the weirdest part about all of it. So anyway, to answer that question, it's you know, the athletes aren't thinking. The less you can think, the better. You know, like you're trying to just use raw talent and intuition and ability and reacting, proactive and then reactive, you know, reflexes and things like that. Where once you start thinking, whenever I started thinking, then you started like, I almost like talking negative to myself sometimes. I'm like, oh, like I've had times where like, oh, you're gonna mess this up, you know, things like that. Like, whoa, like, you know, like, you know, like you're almost like, you know, but if you're in the flow state, you're like above your body, like you're like floating, you're like doing things and you're like moving, and you're like, whoa, like I am in slow motion right now, and you're doing things like almost above your body, and you could like just see everything seconds before it even happened. And it's really an incredible thing to be in, but not a
Correct.
Do you think this is why so many athletes end up kind of like full circling their wealth? I'm hoping you can hear me and you'll come back to it. But like, do you think this is it's an incredible thing to be in, but do you think that this flow state, like this lack of capacity at times to kind of like come out of it, is the reason that they just do so poorly financially?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because it's like, again, they're somewhat diametrically opposed worlds in that sense, where it's like you have a really hard time grasping what's going on because your kinetic smartness, I guess, or, you know, your physiological, like what you're, you know, it's like I always think of like the 8-pronged like wheel of like the different intelligences, and like the emotional intelligence, physical intelligence, all these different things. Yeah, athletes tend to have like that couple on the other side of the spectrum, where maybe an engineer or like a normie, or, you know, or whatever, like everyone's got these couple different intelligences that they are best in, and athletes tend to not have those that do super well with investing. They just don't align with that, right? Like they'd be warriors, right? Like for a long time, those would probably just been the guys in the Spartan 300, like with the shields on, like they were incredible warriors, but you didn't want like the other 70% of society on that front line, you know? So that's kind of how life shakes out.
So as you're describing this, one thing that is popping in my head is that there is like an engineering flow state as well, which is, it's not vibe coding, but before vibe coding existed, you would probably call it vibe coding, where you understand the problem and you're coding through the solution, and you see elegance and you see how it ties to all these other things. And it's a very awesome state to be in, to understand what the problem is, to be making progress toward the problem, to be solving the problem in elegant ways, highly compressed, using the right algorithms, using the right data structures, et cetera, et cetera. And like, it's awesome. Being in that state is awesome. Having that problem, like you can spend days where time doesn't exist. It's amazing. It's incredible. But I think, and so correct me if I'm wrong on this, because obviously you're an athlete, you're much more closer to that. As an engineer, you are creating a product, something, you are building something, be it a bridge, be it a code, be it whatever it is, a distribution system, etc. It just, you have that flow state will result in an end product. Okay. Now, what I hear you talking about sports, what is the end product? Is it, I get to, the end product is a TV spot, right?
Right.
The end product the end product is kind of like, it is the end product itself. It is human excellence, right? People understand and want to watch human excellence, and they realize they can't do that, and they're awed by the excellence that they see. Okay, so
entertainment.
So there's a clear, in my mind, and this is the point I'm trying to get to, there's a clear hierarchy. You have your ethical framework that you operate out of. The athlete then operates using that ethical framework, and then the end product is its own thing itself. And so what you're doing is you're just channeling your everything you said into this particular excellence, right? For the engineer, it can be the exact same thing. Your ethical framework channels into you as an engineer going through this process of being an excellent engineer, but there's a step higher, which is, well, what are you going to build first? And then there's a step lower. Did you actually build the thing? There's an output to your efforts. And that output is then used by other people, or not necessarily, but it's used by other people, and it can be used for good, but it could also be used for evil. And the engineer, being part of this process, needs to make choices, or should have to make choices about, do I want to actually build the evil thing? Right. And you can get through you can get through a lot of this stuff with a very strong moral framework, guns being a fantastic example. Is it good that I, as an engineer, build guns? Well, yeah, because guns help people defend themselves. And whether or not I'm going to build guns that end up killing people is irrelevant, because somebody else is going to build the guns. And it's good that I'm a part of the process building the guns for the particular use case of defense, whatever kind of defense that is, right? So that's a clear moral hierarchy about how an engineer can go through the process of having a strong moral backbone about how things should be built and what they should be done. Now, imagine if it's just moral relativism. The engineer basically says, oh, it doesn't matter. Whatever, do you, that's fine. I'm going to build guns for, it doesn't matter. You can use them however you want. I don't care. Like, that can still work. You can still justify building guns under that example. But you start to run into difficulty, because if it's just moral relativism, then you're explicitly including the group of people. I'm building guns for the group of people that are going to do evil with the guns. Like, that's my target. That's what I want to do when you're operating in a morally relativistic framework like that. And it's bonkers to do that, in my opinion. And moral relativism is insane, right? For that particular purpose. Like, I want to do this thing because, whatever, it's good for you. It's good for you.
My wife worked at a FANG company for a very long time. And if people aren't familiar with FANG, that's like Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. Those are like the big, stocks now. Netflix is now being replaced with NVIDIA, but anyways. When Google removed "Don't be evil" from their mission, that was like a big thing in FANG, right? Because Facebook had the move fast, break things. Google had the "Don't be evil." Netflix had we're a sports team. Like, these are like the North Stars that these different FANG companies had. Apple always had the simplify, 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 with the two simplifies crossed out. Like, these are kind of like these North Star monikers for these companies. and these frameworks that we're talking about kind of go back to what you were talking about, Brandon, about the, don't think it hurts the team. Like, it's funny, but these platitudes are important, right? It's like everybody always will throw offhandedly. It's like, oh, the golden rule, right? The golden rule, the golden rule. That's a Christian worldview, right? The golden rule, if you're going to throw it out and like want it applied back to you, like do unto others that you have them do unto you, like that is a Jesus breathed, literally, perspective. That's it. Like if you in any way, shape, or form like want to throw that at somebody, you are throwing a Christian worldview at them. And even if you're an atheist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're absolutely right. Like relativism does not have a framework. Like relativism, it's anything goes. Anything is permissible in a relativistic world, and I think that's one of the challenges for cantillionaires in general, not just Bitcoin cantillionaires, but the cantillionaire class, is they have a relativistic framework that's based around the one thing that matters in their life, which is money, right? Like money and power. And I think that's where we're seeing such a degradation of society at present, because when the original, pilgrims from the United States perspective came over here, um, you couldn't really live in a relativistic society because you'd be eaten by a bear, right? Like you had to have a perspective of like, oh, getting eaten by a bear, like, because also like the thought of getting eaten by a bear is bad is not relative, right?
That's
Doing
just like
no-
your opinion, man.
it like this
So
is the thing
consequence.
that really, Adam Back posted, and like people have asked him for it, but I haven't seen them post it. But I was like going through a thread of Adam and a couple other people, and Adam said that at one point in time there was a like framework that the core devs were using for development, and I'm like, I'd love to see that document. I'd love to see what they were using, and I'd love to actually like make another one now, right? I think there's definitely a case for a Bitcoin constitution. I know Brandon and I both know Ulrich, who like wrote the Bitcoin constitution, or like the Declaration of Monetary Independence.
Yep.
And it's like that kind of is a document like that. I do think though a platitude is probably better, not because it's incorrect, but because I think it can like meme itself into being correct. I was talking to Bondor about this the last show, and I'll kind of like leave it to you, but like I think I'm curious which the question is, which platitude for Bitcoin do you think has been the most effective at spreading the mission of Bitcoin? And my current belief is, to this point, the best platitude that was ever given to Bitcoin is magic internet money, because it allowed so much amazing development to happen. Because I don't think people realize the problem with Bitcoin in the beginning was the 10-minute settlement time. Like the 10-minute settlement time instantaneously took Bitcoin out of the running of being cash. Period. Like no one is going to sit at Best Buy or any restaurant and wait an additional 10 minutes for a transaction to settle. They're just not going to. Unless they're Italian, they're not doing it. And so
Debatable because of replaced by fee, but that's another
the
issue.
magic piece of that phrase in my mind probably drove a lot more of the development of like Lightning and some of these other L2 solutions that are trying to do like, Fedimints and like the instantaneous cash settlement, because you had a thing to go towards. Like I used to work at a big tech company, and the whole point was magic is a thing to strive for, and magic is not a relative thing. Like magic is a feeling, something you conjure. And so for me, I think magic internet money did so much more for the adoption of Bitcoin than people realize. And so I'm curious for you guys, like what do you think are platitudes that are like Bitcoin centric, or just in general, that would be good to apply to Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the one that comes to mind is just like, fix the money, fix the world. So just broken money. Obviously, people understanding that, because again, most people don't even understand the system they're in now, right? So it's hard to get them to understand this new world. Like, hey, we're gonna go to a new world. Well, why? Why are we going to a new world? Like, what are we doing here? So the magic internet money, those things kind of go together, right? Where it's like, oh, then it's like magic internet money. Like, what is this? So I think that those are really important, that do kind of come together. Quick side note, though, it is fascinating though that you have a lot of people still to this day, whether they're like altcoiners or some of the forks of Bitcoin or whatever, and it's like, oh, this was, looks peer-to-peer cash settlement. This is not Satoshi's real version, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, I mean, he did have a 10-minute, final settlement. So like he knew something. He knew again, this is where like multiple things can be true. I think, again, government-run schools have effed up our country so badly over the last 100+ years of this like rote memorization, just like conform, obey, bell rings, go to the next thing. When can I go to the bathroom? When can I go on vacation? When can I get out of school? It's just glorified daycare. And we've taught generation after generation of people to just conform and they can't critically think. Coming back to what we're all talking about of like seeing the forest and the trees, being able to like get in a flow state. That's anything but that happens in school. It's like, just do as I say, follow this format, no creativity, there's no collaboration. And so we see the remnants or the realities of what we're dealing with. So then you have a small group of people like us, maybe, tens of thousands or 100,000 people across the world that think like we do. And you're fighting 8 billion people who have been indoctrinated by government-run schools. And here we are. And so it's cognitive dissonance, even though people can feel problems on the things we've outlined and talked about, and but they don't know. They can't even think outside the box. It's like, well, wait, the old system, like, yeah, it's collapsing, but you're this new system, and they don't question the old system they're in that does all the things they're questioning about the new system already. And you're like, what is happening right now? And so for me, it goes back to, and sorry, I'm taking this on a tangent as I usually do a little bit, but it goes back to some of the things we were saying earlier with like generalists versus specialists, where like we're a world, like we're humans, we're meant to be generalists. Like we're not really, in my opinion, meant to be specialists. Like we're not meant to just like, hey, I'm just like, my dad's an optometrist. Like, are you supposed to just be an optometrist for life? Now, fortunately, my dad is a super generalist. Actually, the guy's like crazy. He's like, a hunter. He's an outdoorsman. He can fix, rip a car apart, bring it back together. He's an optometrist. But like, that's how humans generally should. Robert Kiyosaki wrote about this numerous times over the last 20 years, that like the warlords bringing this Genghis Khan thing actually made me think of it too, where you had people that they created specialization. Again, this is why I'm saying this all too, because of schooling. Rockefeller, same thing. The warlords of the day are the robber barons, or the huge entrepreneurs, the cantillionaires, actual fiat cantillionaires, who wanted doers, not thinkers. They want specialists. So that way people cannot think outside the box. They can only see in their purview. In Robert Kiyosaki's book, I might have it here actually. I don't know. It's the one that he wrote in the last 5 years. It was like the capitalist manifesto. I think that's what it was. And he talks a bunch about this. And he just talks about the warlords that back in the day, and they created specialists in their tribes so that way people didn't come after them. It was a way to distract people from coming after the warlord himself. And then they had the pawns, the bishops, like all these different people to then go do their little jobs and then be satiated and like, oh, okay, like I'm good. I've got a comfortable little life. And it basically kills your spirit at the end of the day. But we're meant to be generalists. Like we're meant to know a little about a lot of things, because we had to, again, some of the things we're alluding to of like, you had to know like the bear is going to kill you. I don't think half this country would know that a bear might kill them. Like I think they could just like, people just think they can walk outside and we're like, I don't know, I saw him on like his kids show. The bear looked friendly. Masha.
That's
no
again,
show,
that's just like your opinion, man.
I mean, that's the crazy world we're in. So anyway, I'll get off my high horse, but that to me is what it comes down to. We're living in this world where people vote. They vote with their wallet, their feet, everything through the prism of their job, through their specialization. Well, I spent 12 years in school doing said thing, and they can't think outside that. There's no critical thinking. It's too much cognitive dissonance, and they vote through that lens, whether it's the National Education Association, the teachers, all the, like you see it in all these unions, like they know it's wrong. They know it's wrong, and they still do it anyway. Because of what? Well, the paycheck. Well, this and that. Because they have a broken money that they're clinging to and grasping to and enslaved to. Period. End of story.
I love that, because it's 100% true with regard to the schooling thing. Every government school has every incentive to teach moral relativism under the guise of human secularism, but essentially teach this moral framework called moral relativism, which basically says there is no such thing as an absolute of any, like, it doesn't matter. Like there's always a justification for any kind of thing, which itself is an absolute and just self-refuting, immediately self-refuting. But they don't teach anybody to reason through anything, naturally, just as you said. And then what does the government get on the other end of that? They get soldiers who can soldiers who can execute on any command. regardless of what the command is.
And on top of that, Zoolander style. Not even like it's not like a direct thing. People are like waiting for like, wow, I don't see a trumpet in here. It's like I gotta go. Oh, I'm hypnotized. No. They're indirect. They're under the surface, and you don't even realize they're dog whistles in essence. And people just on command. It's wild.
Yep. I think what's interesting about that too, though, is actually I'm an entrepreneur, and you guys are entrepreneurs too, and the amount of times you hear other entrepreneurs complain it's so hard to find good people. Yeah, because that's what society is training them to be, is dolts, right? Like, people are trained to be people who just suckle at the government teat. That's literally the whole point. And that's one of the reasons why they're importing the third world right now to the United States, is because you want lemmings. If you're a politician, you want somebody who's going to go and just pull the chain for you, because you don't want somebody who's going to use their mind. You don't want somebody who's going to, and that's on both sides, by the way. I'm not knocking on Democrats or on Republicans on this. I'm knocking on both of them, because the point of the uniparty is to stay in power. The point of the government is to stay open, right? Outside of this shutdown that's going now, like, the point of the government is for you to. The biggest contention that Bitcoiners have right now with the current financial system is that it exists. And the point of the current financial system is to continue to make you not think about that thing, to make you not think about the fact that the current system exists and you didn't choose it. And that's the same thing with the government. The point of the government is to not have you think about this government needs to go away, as to have you think about the fact that, the government needs to change. So never in your mind is there a presupposition that the government is actually incorrect or something that shouldn't actually be there. It's always a constant. And so they want their idea in your mind to be a constant. The government is a constant. The money is a constant. And the Bitcoin ethos and the Bitcoin idea of this is that is incorrect. There are a lot of great books on this. Snow Crash is a great book if you guys are looking for something. That's the book that coined the word metaverse, by Neil Stephenson. And then the best one is kind of like the Bitcoiner Manifesto, which is I'm blanking on it. What's the sovereign individual? They kind of like go in there and kind of unpack this whole thing. But that's the thing. It's like the issue we have right now is we have generations, as you were saying, of people who've grown up in a system that have taught them the system should exist, or rather that the system is a constant. Not that, like, they've never had this thought of like the system wouldn't exist. Like, it's always A to B to C. That's the main thing with investing. People are like, oh, you're going to get 10% returns or whatever. It's like, no, you're not. Like, that is a fallacy. That is an idea. And they always put at the bottom in like an asterisk, past performance does not generate future results. But like, the point here is like, oh yeah, but that's because the system isn't real. The system is a belief. And so that is what they're always trying to buttress, is they're always trying to buttress this belief that the system needs to exist. And the point of Bitcoin is to kill it, period. But that's really hard for people to stomach. And I think that's actually the biggest messaging problem that Bitcoin has, is like, Bitcoin is trying to kill something that will cause people a lot of pain, period, full stop. Like, the world will change overnight if Bitcoin were to kill the current market. But people are resistant to it because people don't like pain. We like microwaves.
I was just going to say that the pain to change has to be less than the pain you're currently experiencing. And that's the biggest problem we have right now by far. I mean, look at this just this past week. The 15-year mortgage auto loans, 50-year mortgages. You got the $2,000 stimmy checks. That's anything but pain. That's delaying and kicking the can down the road. That is not getting the pain that you need, taking the medicine you need. That's another dose of whatever drug, your drug of the day. That's what we are doing. And that's, as a Bitcoiner, you're waiting around for the society to clean itself out and disinfect itself and clean out the rot. But we just keep kicking that can. We're going to take one more hit under the bridge and it'll just be fine this time. We're just going to do it one more time. And that's what we keep doing. This has been going on for decades. And that we see the rot of society. You see, we're in a depression. It's funny. I was just watching Jack Mahler's show from Monday that he does on Mondays. And he had said, like, we're in a depression. We've been in a depression, showing, the money printing versus gold and the money printing versus stock market. And the stocks look like it's way up. Gold looks like it's kind of like sideways going down. And then against Bitcoin, it's just completely crashed. And it's funny because for the last year or so or two, I've been telling people my thought of like, I think we're in a modern depression. Like it's just been papered over. So the stocks look great and things look great. But like, we all laugh about WTF happened in 1971, but look since then, you have, a 10x of every bad thing you can imagine is, child out of wedlock, divorces, on and on and on. The number of hospital administrators and the number of MBAs and all these people, like, we don't need more of these people. There's no feedback loop. And so the guys swinging hammers, which what we do need to build housing. No, we're gonna do a 50-year mortgage instead. Well, that's because the guy swinging hammers is trying to be the 3 billionth lawyer, and he's trying to be the 3 billionth MBA. We don't need any more of those people. And so, like, that's like the wild distortion in the market that. Did I lose you guys? That wild distortion in the market that we have. So the pain to change is not there. And then bringing this full circle to, like, what you guys were saying a second ago of, like, we're in this war, we're in this information war and monetary war, good versus evil spirits war. And, like, at 5 years old, they just want a bunch of doers. So they start training you at 5, government education, really 3 now, like, incentivize you. Oh, hey, you want some more daycare? I mean, schooling. Do you want it? Well, at 3 years old, the state will take you, and then you ship them off. And then as soon as the kid gets there, it's like, hey, this is your helmet. These are your night vision goggles. This is your
food.
Exactly. This is your MRE. This is your canteen. This is the magazine, how you load your weapon. And then if people are sitting around wondering, like, what are you teaching my kids? Like, how come you know the agenda? No one asked the question, why are we at war? Why are we at war? No one asked. It's just like, send your kids off. You're preparing them for war. No one knows why we're at war. And everyone forgot to ask the question, well, why are we at war? I just assumed, to your guys' point of it's a constant. No one questioned the system, A, B to C. Or why are we at war? And in essence, the question is, why is the money broken? Why are we in this system? We can change it on a dime. It's psychological, but again, max pain is needed. That's where I'm at. Max pain.
So, JD, you asked the question, like, what's the biggest? You had a word for it, but
Platitude.
Biggest platitude, story, meme, and, like, I really think that's it. Like, it is fix the money, fix the world. And if we fail to communicate that, then Bitcoin is just like, well, it's arbitrary data. Like, whoa, arbitrary data storage. And it's like, no, guys, like, Bitcoin is the first thing that humanity has ever invented that is a provably scarce fixed supply money. That you can never change unless the social layer decides to change it. But the fact that exists and that nobody else can do anything about it, and that, like, hey, this is an actual solution to this problem, really, in my mind, just elevates that beyond all other possible use cases, because it's the only way you can actually do it. It's the only way you can actually solve this litany of problems that we see in our civilization. And ignoring that solution or subjugating that solution to some other use is so fiat mind blind backwards that, like, how, like, it's like, I would rather somebody in that camp, it feels like they would rather that humanity would just fester in cesspools as opposed to thrive, as opposed to be elevated. As, like, I want my kids to have better outcomes than I had, right? Everybody should want that. But when you ignore all the big picture things and refuse to think, you are literally saying, I want my kids to continue down this path of having worse outcomes than I'd have. And that's, like, literally what all of civilization, at least in America and the West, has been doing for 100 years since the Federal Reserve. Every generation, it's been harder. It's gotten worse. It's more ridiculous. It's more depraved. It's more insane. Like, everything about it just gets a little bit worse. And then there'll be, like, a spike. Oh, something got better. And then it just erodes and just gets a little bit worse and just goes on. Like, people want to choose that outcome when they don't have to. How do we communicate that? How do we actually break people's minds to actually look at this and see that this is the solution? This is the problem. This is the solution. Let's go.
Yep. It's interesting to me, the challenge. So society needs to have a car accident. And so what I mean by that, I constantly talk about the physics of emotion, right? The emotion of a relationship, the emotion of a moment, the emotion of anything has the exact same attributes as physics, right? If you are blindsided because your spouse or your boyfriend, your partner, or whatever it is, cheats on you, right? That's a car accident. That's a moment. It's a big moment that you have, like a negative wall that your emotional state meets. And then you have two options. Like you're going to go through that wall, depending on the momentum, or you're going to bounce backwards off that wall, or like, but something big is going to happen, right? There's going to be a crash. There's going to be a blow up. And there's going to be a lot of change, but there's physics in that. Society is an oil tanker, right? And it's been moving. I guess we need an iceberg. We're going to use the oil tanker. Things like society needs to hit an iceberg. And I think we kind of have. Like the iceberg we've hit is the dollar. It's the fiat system, right? And we've been trucking along and just like check, just like the Titanic, getting all these holes in the hole. And they just keep trying to like pull water out and, constantly like put solves on it. But at the end of the day, the problem is it's like we're on the wrong boat. Like the challenge we have to have is we have to have the entire boat just sink. And then, the survivors kind of get back on the water and then kind of look up like, oh, we got to make a new plan. Because the issue we have is this, we have a world where we have $2,000 iPhones when the iPhone should be $5, guys. Like the iPhone is so advanced and it's so forward in terms of the way of innovation. But like innovation is a deflationary thing. It's not an inflationary thing. And I think that's actually the thing that's the contention we have, right? We have incomes that need to inflate, right? Incomes have to go up because the money supply is going up and you have more dollars chasing the same amount of assets, which is Econ 101. When you put more, if you have $2 in the system and you have 2 tacos, each taco is worth $1. But if you put $4 in the system, each taco, is now worth $2, right? Because you've added more money in, and it's the same, it's more money chasing the same number of assets. And so the challenge that we're coming into right now is we've been trained that everything should be going up. I should be asking for a raise. I should be asking for a raise. I should be asking for a raise. No, you should be adding more value and staying constant. And the price of everything should be going down, because at the end of the day, then your purchasing power is actually more. And this is such a challenging thing for people to understand because they've never seen it before. And that's actually what Bitcoiners have been seeing and they feel, right? If you have one Bitcoin that you bought, or that if you mined 50 Bitcoin
Bitcoiners feel this in real time. It's incredible.
And so it's just the challenge is the whole world needs to have a car accident to have this reset of thinking. And we haven't had that yet. And honestly, I think we need a Weimar moment. We need a melt up moment. Like I'm very optimistic that whatever Michael J. Burry sees is going to happen. I'm hoping it happens. It's probably not going to happen on November 25th, which is when he said it's going to happen. But I'm hoping it happens in the same way 2008 happened, like he thought. He could be wrong, but we need something catastrophic to happen to the entire system, some shock to happen, because the system is acting actively against that happening because they want to keep you in the dark, because they want to stay on top. The Cantillionaires want a Cantillionaire.
It's a full circle moment right there. That's and it is. There's no better way to really say it. I mean, it's they want to be on top, and you don't know any other way, right? And this is, again, just to give a little empathy to the other side of the coin as well. And when I say other side, I mean maybe we'll call it like the people in power, just in generally speaking. Governments are people, and there's a lot of like outrage right now. You see with like just here in Michigan, the schools here, the scientists got up on the board. David Harris just posted it like today or yesterday, and it was like parents don't know better than scientists and the experts and blah 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 blah. And, at the end of the day, when you're in these positions, we talk about like you only know your silo and not seeing your forest from the trees. This is what makes it very tough. If you're an elected politician, or if you happen to be actually a scientist or something, think about, again, society coming down on your job or your profession or whatever you're doing, and everyone telling you you're basically a piece of shit, you suck, you don't know what you're talking about. You would feel very threatened. You would feel like, whoa, like I've studied this my entire life. Like you guys are all morons. At the end of the day, this is what fiat does. Like you've chosen to drink from the chalice of easy money, and you punched a hole in the factory up top of the river, and it's now distorted and polluted everything downstream. So now you have people that shouldn't be fighting with each other, the scientists, the expert, whatever, the parents, all the school. They should be all in collaboration, or whatever. But they're not. They're all each other's throats, trying to defend themselves. naturally. That is a natural thing, and to justify why they're doing or justifying their existence. But the incentives are such because of the broken money. It's polluted everything downstream. You can't have honest society with dishonest money. You can't have good fruit from a bad tree. It's impossible, and these systems don't fit. They are incompatible to what you guys were just outlining, and this is where we need some type of cataclysmic moments. And as a Bitcoiner, your contention, your hope is that people aren't hurt in the process, and we can stave people off from getting hurt or going down with the Titanic. We get them on the lifeboat. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to save everybody, and that's just not the case. People are going to get hurt, and that's the sad part. But you're trying to get as many people off the ship as you can, because it's coming to a point where, the ship is going down. It took 4 hours to sink, which it might be 40 years or 4 centuries even potentially. But whatever that is, it's coming down, and that's where it's hard to see in the day-to-day. When we zoom out 100 years from now, 200 years from now, it's going to be very obvious. But it's tough right now. We look like the crazy one, telling everyone to get off. But it's deceptive. It's very tough.
What do you hope, Bondor, is the event? I know it's like a random question, but like, what do you hope is the thing that kind of like jostles people awake? Like, do you hope it's like a cataclysmic thing, or do you think it's going to be more gradual? Like, what do you think?
100% gradual. I don't think there's any cataclysmic thing. There's always going to be wars, and there's always going to be inflationary events and things and riots and the whole thing, right? But it's always just this slow burn of absurdity after absurdity. And I think, honestly, what I think happens is that Bitcoiners like you guys, essentially, all of our agency just continues to grow, and it doesn't actually ever stop growing, provided all the rest of the world is just continually on this slow collapse, this slow sinking. And what happens next is that we, as our agency doesn't collapse and in fact grows, we control more and more of the legacy world, and we affect the legacy world in more and more ways that are amicable to us. Like, oh yeah, well, I, as a Bitcoiner, see that the public school system is ridiculous, so I'm not going to participate in that. Yep. And because I have Bitcoin and all of this agency that comes with it, I can afford to do that. I can afford to homeschool or private school or whatever, the alternative schooling solution that allows you to exit the system that you perceive is broken. And this is totally the sovereign individual thesis. It's we get to basically start choosing these things that actually protect our families and protect our livelihoods and protect because we've already made the choice that allows us to protect our agency, which is by investing and self-custodying Bitcoin. We no longer have the absurdly ridiculous third party of a bank that can kind of just shut us down whenever we want. No, we just don't have it anymore. Like, sorry, you guys can't do anything to me. Therefore, I'm not beholden to you. I'm beholden to me, and I can make choices that are beholden to me. And when people can start to do that, and they start to do that in mass, which they will start to do, and which we already see Bitcoiners doing in mass, what happens next is that it's a backstop, it's a firewall, and the people in the Bitcoin communities end up taking over and owning and having agency over all of the world. I mean, this is a long thing that happens over probably 100, 150 years, but it's something that happens and gradually happens. I can just see it already happening in my life, and like what I was able to do before Bitcoin and what I was able to, and what I'm able to do now. It's night and day in terms of agency. So yeah, I don't think that there's going to be a catastrophic event. There'll be events that cause people to question their own particular view and circumstance, but there won't be a World War II or whatever. I just don't think that's gonna. I don't think that's in the cards.
This is really interesting. So I tend to be like 10 to 20 years out, maybe like 10 to 30 years out, and I think it coincides with the demographic shift. But to your point, Bonder, I think that this is where like an Eric Cason, who, I love and respect Eric. I mean, just, it is, you have some of them, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, so maybe I'm not saying it completely spot on, but you have some who might be more on the cryptography side. Yeah. I have his book around here, something too. It's a great book, but it's, you get this world where it's tough. And I was asking Jeff Booth about this like a month ago, and I was like, our whole episode is about this basically, of like, how do you square this circle? Like, how do you build these two parallel systems, like without feeling like we're at the North Pole and we're just hiding over here building this Bitcoin thing, and all of us plebs get it and none of the elites get it, none of the 1%, none of the governments, none of these people do it. We don't live in that world. And that's where like the only problem I have with Eric at times is something like that, where it's noble. Like I want what he wants, but I don't know how in reality that plays out, where just the plebs get it first and get Bitcoin first. And then, oh, we get to unveil, like we're at the North Pole building it. Then we unveil it like 15, 20 years from now. We're like, here it is, guys. Here it is, elites. We're using this system now. If we could coordinate that, that'd be amazing. But I just don't think we can in reality. And so that's where, to your point, Bondor, I think that 150 years would be like this slow ticket. Let's say this. I think it's either going to be 150 years from now, or it's going to be like 10 years from now. Like, I don't know if there's like a middle ground. I think it's either like it just is slow chipping away of like, we're going to educate and build in the background and just very slowly, and people will eventually, the Bitcoiners agency will rise slowly over like 100-year time frame, and then eventually just becomes the thing. Or maybe it's more cataclysmic. And my cataclysmic might be, to answer both of your kind of questions, the cataclysm is a demographic shift. To me, it's just like the younger generations, I think, want transparency. We see it with the files, we'll call it, that were released this week, or they're trying to release these files and now put it back on Trump. This whole thing with this guy that had an island somewhere and he was doing stuff with people who are under 20 years old and blah, 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 whatever. That whole thing, the younger generations, no matter what side, are getting very sick of lack of transparency. Obviously, the three of us being what I would consider the younger generations of like 40 and under, 45 and under, very, very tired of lack of transparency. No, there's no justice. A 3-tier justice system, 5-tier, 10-tier justice system. We're done with it. And the transparency is coming back into society. And so that to me is why I look at like 10, 20 years out, when the older generations sunset from society in the halls of power, and the wealth they have transfers to the younger generation. That to me is the cataclysm. So that's what I'm hoping for. I'm going to will it into existence. And that's going to be my vision I put out there. And that's what I've been kind of really hell bent on the last year.
Any good questions, Bondor? Following up on that, but I just hope we have a I think for me, I'm not as optimistic that we're not going to get out of this without a hot war. Just what we're seeing from like what's happening in Ukraine and everywhere else like that. And I'm not picking any sides on any of these topics, by the way. But specific, what I'm talking about, the new Russia drones that are powered by fiber optic cable. This is where I'm going with this. Is we're moving into a Skynet type world. There was that guy who, I don't know if he was Palantarian or whatever, but he just like threw the little drone that was the size of, size of his thumb basically, and it just went and just like delivered a kill shot straight to a dummy drone on the stage. Right. That's the world we're moving into.
That's the world we're moving into for sure. That particular example that you're talking about was entirely fabricated, staged. It's like literally Hollywood produced. Like it's not an actual real thing, but obviously it's true.
But, yeah,
like, we're going in that direction. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think what's what's going to be interesting is I don't know, I've always had this notion and idea my whole life that I'm going to live through the fall of Rome. Like I've just always kind of believed that that America was the next Rome. Like I feel like I'm going to live through the fall of the United States, and it's just going to kind of come out the other side, hopefully better. But I do think we're going to have like a 1929, like 2029 style depression. I don't know why, I just feel that. I feel like we're kind of like on the precipice of that. And it'll be really interesting to see, in the same way that depression kind of came about, are the people who were protected the Bitcoiners, and what that will do to the psyche of Bitcoin in people's minds. Because if, and I'll land the plane on this, like anywhere you go in the world, and I've been to a lot of countries, the most lauded group of people are usually American Christian conservatives. Why? Because they go and do mission trips. Like they go out and they serve in these communities all around the world. And so I think, this will be kind of like my last note on this. Like, I think if that type of mentality, to where like the Christian conservatives have this kind of like, and I'm going to call it a chip on their shoulder, to serve, because that is what they've been trained to do. And so I think that's going to be the interesting thing. And that's actually why this knots versus core debate in my mind is so important, is Bitcoin is as much an ethos as it is a protocol and as it is a currency. And the people who are surrounding themselves with that ethos need a direction. And my hope is it becomes the same type of chip that the Christian conservative has on their shoulders. We need to make the best money to make the best world, kind of thing. Because if it's, we need to make a relativistic database, then if that 1929 style crash and depression happens, there's just going to be people decrepit dying on the side of the road and nobody's going to care. Versus the Bitcoiners who have a lot of Bitcoin stepping in and opening hospitals, stepping in and creating a better world. Like, we need some type of moral North Star, which is why relativism is not the answer, in my opinion.
Dude, you hit on something really good. I know we're wrapping, but I would love to see that more. I mean, it's funny because I've been thinking about for a few years now, when does a Bitcoiner buy a sport team? You know, when does it come up that like someone bought, you know, whatever, Real Madrid, or they bought the LA Dodgers, and it's just like, and people are like, wait, what? He's a what? He's a Bitcoiner? But to your point, what more impact could you have than like, yeah, I just opened a hospital. Like, I just opened 10 hospitals. Hey, I'm doing this and that. You know, where's that? You know, I'm not a Bitcoin whale from 2011, so I can't do that, unfortunately, right now. But I do believe that in this cadre of this epoch of Bitcoiners that say got in since 2017, 2018, 2019, probably somewhere in there. So from there to now, in essence, that this cadre of people, because there's enough of us, and in 10 years time, you're going to see a massive charitable movement of Bitcoiners that have a lot of wealth that are now doing things in society to do exactly that, and really actually take hold and shift society faster, which would align, Bondor, more towards my 10 or 20 years. People will see that. It'll align with what's going to...
Yeah,
so
that'd be great.
Anyway, that's an amazing point though, JD. That's, yeah. Where is that? That needs to be here.
For real. The way forward is not in exiting the fiat system.
Or rotating to ETFs or some bullshit like that. Like,
yeah, the way forward is, again, the move is to attack. The move is to build hospitals, build schools, solve problems, show offense. Yeah. Show why the current system is broken, provide solutions that solve it. It is not to exit, to move to a different country, to do things, because that country's, you're going to have the same problem. That country also
still humans,
fiat, still fiat, still humans. It's the exact same things. It's the globalist. Like, this is why every city looks exactly the same. Why? Well, because they have the exact same incentives, the exact same money, the exact same world view of what reality is, or how you make money and the rest of it. It's all fiat. You cannot exit. The only way is through. You have to attack. The move is to attack.
I love that.
JD, last words.
Amazing.
You can build more where you are with what you have than you realize.
Another mind blower. Honestly, boys, I don't have anything else to say. You guys both just nailed it. This is one of my most favorite, fun Bitcoin episodes of anything I've ever done. So whether it was me doing it or someone else was on, we touched a lot, and you guys just nailed it with the last two things. There's nothing else I can say. Go build. Be on the offense.
Indeed. Offense, brah.
Cool. Wait, thank you everybody for jumping in. We know we were competing with Grant Cardone and Michael Saylor. So for everybody who's here right now, we appreciate you.
We were competing. We were definitely competing. We were in the same ring
with them and Simply Bitcoin and those guys. But no, we do really appreciate your time, and let us know what you think. Let us know if there's any questions or things you'd like to hear us talk about. Or if you just don't like my face. I'm very open to that. I hear that often, so don't shy away from that. But no, we appreciate it, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Peace. Thanks for tuning in to Better by Bitcoin. Bitcoin makes everything better. Like, subscribe, and follow us on X at BetterBYBTC, YouTube at BetterBYBitcoin. Not financial advice, mathematical certainty.